So then Geelong will kick to the right of your screen. And Carlton to the left, the legends stand end of the ground. It's Toby Conway back into the team and straight into the ruck against O'Keefe. Carlton to win the opening clearance. Handball from Stevens to Marr, right into towards the full forward area, over the head of Murkov. Carl did well to get rid of his opponent, and stepping on through is O'Sheen Mullen, who's back from the wedding that he attended in Ireland a week and a half ago. Returns to the VFL team today. His kick out of the back line finds Closey. Closey spreads it out to Hardy, who was magnificent last week in that close win over Geelong. Kick into the 50. It was well placed from Jai Clark, who's another one who's returned to the reserves today, and it's marked by Shannon Neal, who's also back into the VFL team. So three of their players stumped Brisbane, really. Conway, Clark and Neal all back into the side today. O'Sheen Mullen, who we've seen. And they've got Hamish Sinnott, who comes in to play his first game of the season this year in the VFL. Of course, he was with Carlton's VFL last year. As we watch over this Shannon Neal kick for goal. Shouldn't have any trouble. It's heading to the left, but it squeaks home. And the Cats draw first blood at IKON Park.
Great transition from deep in defence from the Cats there. Some lovely ball movement, and Jai Clark just able to sit the ball over the top there for Shannon Neal, and he's going to have his hands full today, his young Harry Lemmy, the tall Carlton defender, number 31, shock of blonde hair. I've watched him over the last few weeks, and he looks at home in the back line, does Harry Lemmy, potentially a very nice intercepting defender. Where he might be challenged, though, is the one-on-one contest. He's still a young defender, and at times last week he was pushed around at times, so be a good challenge for Harry Lemmy.
One of 7 AFL-listed players out there for the Blues. They've pulled 3 out of the team today. All 3 of the emergencies that were named for the clash with Geelong later today are not in the team. So no Jackson Binns, Alex Chin-Cotter, and also no Sam Durden, who was set to play his first VFL game of the season, as we've got a throw in here at right half forward for the Cats, who have made a good start here. Going out of the Geelong team, Phoenix Foster, Oliver Wiltshire and Bailey Vanderhoovel, they're all out injured. Ajang Kwol Moon and Tanner Lewis are both omitted. Aidan Mills, Jack Lefroy, Binns and Chin-Cotter are all out for the Blues. There's a mark taken by the co-captain this year, Lockie Young, and out to Tom Phillips. Billy Wilson and Dominic Aquay are both back from their concussion injuries. Also coming in for the Blues today, Bailey Lambert, who's played a lot of good football at this level. Dan, you would have seen him playing for Frankston, and also Darcy Hogg comes in as well for his second game of the season.
Yeah, Bailey Lambert, number 80 for Carlton, the coveted number 80.
Time-honoured.
The time-honoured number 80, but he's a courageous player, Bailey Lambert, knows how to kick a goal as well.
Here's Sean Manor in the clinches, got it to Jecker, who swings the handball out to his teammate there in White, Todd White. Got a couple of Whites out there today. That was the White of Geelong. His kick clears the pack into the 50, and Neal's happy to knock it out of play. Umpire calls for a boundary throw in. The Cats back into attack and quickly.
I think we had a game last week in the VFL where there were 2 browns, 2 whites and a green. So lucky we don't have an orange in the VFL.
Just to keep us on our toes with all of the colour-coded surnames. Very shallow throw in. The ruckman failed to get to that one. Here's Aquay in the back pocket for the Blues. Lemmy, and links it up back with Aquay. His handball found Archie Stevens. Now it's Lewis. Now here is Darcy Hogg back into the team for the Blues. All set his teammate Mara task. Try to get it back to Hogg, and it's come unstuck for the Blues. Lawson Humphries trying to get a handle on the awkward bouncing ball. He was resorted to becoming the tackler. Umpire had a long look. I'm sure we're going to get a stoppage there, and eventually we do on the broadcast wing. The Blues are looking to try and stitch a couple of wins together after outrunning Port Melbourne last week. It's been an interrupted start for the Blues. The Cats are looking for 3 wins in a row as Hardy spins out of trouble, puts the handball out in front of Manor, who has happy memories at this ground. Kick on the outside of the boot. Aquay dropped what he might have taken. Clears the initial area with the handball. Lockie Young for the Blues goes into a pie of the tackle. It's another forward 50 stoppage for Geelong.
He does. He had the 6 goals last year in almost 30 possessions in a VFL Grand Final, Sean Manor.
Yeah, irresistible he was that day. Not quite good enough for the Tigers to get the job done, as we've got another pack that quickly forms here.
For me, Brent, I think the challenge for Carlton is those late 3 changes in Jackson Binns, who's just a running machine at this level, Durden and Chincotta going out, who's one of their more experienced players.
Yeah, I wonder if they'll actually give Binns a game today. He's been mighty close. Was outstanding last week. Humphreys chisels a little kick into the corridor, but Lockie Young has had plenty to do in the early minutes here at IKON Park. Takes another nice defensive grab.
Yeah, they'll need his experience in defence today, you'd think. Lockie Young, who's played the 47 AFL games, including 20 in 2022 for the Kangaroos.
He joined the Blues after being delisted by North Melbourne. He's another one with plenty of AFL experience out there, Tom Phillips. Drives it down the city wing. It's a nice looking kick. It just dropped at the ankles though of Hudson O'Keefe. And he doesn't really do his best work at ground level. The big ruckman for the Blues. Down goes Jai Clark. And the umpire races over to enforce another stoppage on the outer wing. Carlton 15th on the ladder at 1 and 2. Geelong 12th. 2 wins and 2 losses. Carlton, of course, finalists a couple of years ago in the VFL, looking to get back there this year. Both of these teams missed out last year. Lawson Humphreys having plenty of the football early. A long raking left foot kick that clears the pack. Carlton defenders again with some work to do. Here's Billy Wilson. Turns onto the boot and kicks to the sanctuary of the centre wing position. Conway just did enough to keep it away from O'Keefe, and in swoops O'Sullivan. And Geelong once again just set up beautifully behind the football. Murdoch to Jecker, who bursts through the would-be tackler. Nails the kick up towards half forward, in and out of the hands of Bradkey. Humphreys shirks the tackle, spots a man out into the pocket. It's great football from Geelong, and it's in good hands here with Mitch Hardy.
Really polished there by Lawson Humphreys. He didn't panic. A nice composed kick, and finds the experienced Mitch Hardy. The 26-year-old Mitch Hardy.
Yeah, picked up in the mid-season draft last year from Woodville West Torrens, and they say down at Geelong that this guy is really has benefited from the first full pre-season in the AFL system, knocking on the door. 32 disposals and 8 clearances against Brisbane last week. This will take a good kick though, out at left half forward, gives it a chance. It started left and didn't quite come back on the breeze, which we must say there's not a whole lot of it here today at IKON Park, Dan.
Another matchup that holds my interest is the Hudson O'Keefe and Toby Conway ruck duel. Conway's got a couple of years on O'Keefe, but we know that Hudson O'Keefe is really competitive, so it'll be a great challenge for him today. Here they are now.
They play the near side from the kick in. It's mopped up by Riccardi. Handball to his teammate who was stripped of it, Ramshaw. He shares it with Wilson and back to Ramshaw, who just got it on the boot in time. And the destination was the chest of Phillips at half-back for the Blues, who were trying to get it out of their back half, let alone back 50, and get it forward. Nelson. His handball. And his teammate there in Moyer. Carl and Aquay, a little fumble. He will have support here in Phillips. Now the Blues are away. Young will send them into attack. They've got a man all alone in the pocket. It's Liam McMahon, who doubles back and takes the mark. And the first foray forward for the Blues will end in a shot for goal, albeit on the tightest of angles.
Yeah, despite the Aquay fumble, Carlton were able to move the ball with speed on that occasion. And I thought Geelong were really well set up behind the ball. But if you can move the ball with speed, that tends to be able to pierce a hole through defences. And they use the ball well.
Just 5 disposals last week for McMahon in that win over Port Melbourne. But he did kick 2 goals. Game number 46 at this level. Goes the drop punt, and it's a picture-perfect drop punt from Liam McMahon. Talk about efficiency inside 50 for the Blues. I believe that was their first entry. 1 goal, and it's 1 goal apiece here, early days at IKON Park. We've played almost 9 minutes.
I was just watching Liam McMahon as that ball was being transitioned into the forward line, and he just lost his opponent. He was able to get out the back. He's had some time as a defender when he was at Collingwood, Liam McMahon, and he was quite impressive there. Didn't crack it for a senior game.
Yeah, a couple of seasons on the AFL list at Collingwood, like you said, Dan, originally drafted out of the Northern Knights and the Eltham Football Club in the Eastern Football Netball League. That's, I can't say that's good reward for the Blues. That was just their second entry into the 50, but that's just to shake off a little bit of the cobwebs, because, boy, they did a lot of defending in the early minutes. Geelong lead by a point. We're in the middle again. Conway won the hit out and then won the handball as well. He put it out into the park though as Xavier Marr. Toe poke forward by Monaghan. Pinched by Clark. Handball out to White. Down towards half forward. Brilliant again from Lockie Young, who's had the measure of Caelan Bradkey in the early minutes here. Checked his kick a couple of times and then goes past the fallen Bradkey on the mark. Comes out towards the one-on-one contest here. McMahon knocked it down. Roving at the front of the pack there for the Blues was Will White. Kicked inside 50 where his forwards weren't really helping him by playing from behind. Errant handball from the Cats, Miss Jecker. George Stevens, Jecker, and then O'Sullivan, and now Nevitt. And Nevitt comes out towards Bradkey, who takes the mark and then was taken down by Young, who was not in the marking contest.
Yeah, Young claiming that the ball was touched off the boot there, but well done. Caelan Bradkey had a win there on his opponent in Lockie Young, who's been able to pick him off a few times.
Bradkey. Long kick down towards the paint of 50. Good early body use by Rowan. Spilt the mark when the footy arrived. Stevens' handball went looking for Hughes. Beaten by the bounce. It's ripped clear by Lewis. Ended up again with Rowan. His handball a little hot there for Closey, who stuck his head in a hole and then coughed up the handball. Clearing kick came out of the defensive 50 for the Blues to the outer side. Trapped by O'Sullivan, who works through the tackle of Will White. Drives it down towards full forward for the Cats. Clears the pack. It flirts with the top of the goal square. Wilson. Handball to Getty. Kick that went about 3 metres to Lewis and then to Wilson. Bundling kick out of the back 50. Trapped again by O'Sullivan. His target there was Neil. Went to ground far too easy, and then a shocking kick off the last line from Lewis. It went right into the waiting hands of Mitch Nevitt. I'll tell you what, we saw plenty of kicks like that last night in the AFL game just quietly between St Kilda and Port Adelaide. That's not how you come out of the defensive zone.
No, but really impressive is number 14, Connor O'Sullivan, who made his AFL debut for North Melbourne, but on 2 occasions there within, say, 30 seconds, his cleanliness below his knees for a big man.
Good look here for Mitch Nevitt, and he splits the middle. Nevitt's got his first, the Cats have their second, and they make Carlton pay a hefty price from the Michael Lewis mistake on the last line.
Yeah, just on Connor O'Sullivan again, 24 disposals versus the Brisbane Lions last week. They're big numbers for a big man playing in defence. I did see Ari Schoenmakers, I hope I've pronounced that correctly, being a Dutchman. He also had big numbers in his first VFL game for Sandringham against Collingwood. So what we'll see from Connor O'Sullivan is he's not only his ability to defend adequately, but he is a mobile, tall defender who can win his own football and get plenty of it.
Yeah, 198 centimetres. First season at the Cats, he did play against North Melbourne early this year, so 1 game under the belts in that famous number 14. Here come the Cats out of the middle. Clark's handball to Stevens. Kayvan stuck. Again, Carlton up forward playing from behind. Hardy, Stevens, Capron had to be quick. Here's young Patrick Hughes. Flirted with the boundary line and, well, they had to be precise and it wasn't. A turnover for Carlton.
They're going to have their hands full of the Carlton mids in Xavier Marr and Heath Ramshaw up against Jai Clark and Mitch Hardy, who have been really clean in the middle of the ground so far and won a number of stoppages.
Young's kicked down the line, reaching for it, Capron. Ended up with McMahon, White, Ferranato. Long ball down towards full forward. Again, they're playing from behind the Blues. Bringing it to ground was Murdoch. Carlton with good represented at ground level, but not a good handball there from Kuipers. Jecker gets some support in the defensive 50. Geelong should be able to work this one out. And off and running there was Sinnott. Had a bounce and then kicks towards the half-forward line. All on his own down there was Shannon Neal. Awkward with the bouncing ball. Got it to Buse.
Oh, well done.
Yeah, good under pressure. Here's Manor. Geelong go deep into attack. Conway reaching for it with the one hand and stuck it. Beautiful mark.
It probably wasn't the best at kicks either from Sean Manor there. He had a 3-on-2 and it looked like he actually hit the Carlton defender, but the long arms of Toby Conway able to reach over Michael Lewis and take the mark.
That frightening wingspan of the 206 centimetre developing Geelong ruckman celebrated a birthday during the week. 21 on Wednesday. Back into the VFL team today. Another set shot that comes from out wide. Conway hunched over the kick and just lashed at it a little bit, and it's gone across the face and through for a minus score. So 2-2-14 Geelong. Carlton 1-1-7. Lagging a little bit behind on the scoreboard here at IKON Park. As Carlton once again come to the broadcast side from the kick in. Having difficulties getting it past the wing and getting it past this man though, Connor O'Sullivan. Repeat entries for the Cats. O'Sullivan won't be the one to send it in. He comes out short to Jeckett. Picked up in the rookie draft late last year after spending a few years on the list at Hawthorn. He's gone off his line. So off about one step, he hangs it up into the 50. The Flyers will come. It was Conway again. Hughes tied up underneath. Quay strong in the tackle.
Yeah, so they look really steady in defence to Geelong with Emerson Jecker back there and O'Sullivan, Oscar Murdoch as their third tall.
Ferranato received the handball from his teammate in the clinches. Came out looking for Kuipers. Good roving there from Hogg, but his handball missed McMahon, and McMahon then went in and caught the Geelong player high. That was Todd White. Once again, Carlton finding it really difficult to break down the Cats. Caperon's kick is loose, and so Mullen's going to have to be clean here. He runs straight past the Carlton player and Will White, indulged in a bounce, and then a short kick here to Hardy. Swings into the middle, and O'Sullivan. Geelong just racking up the possessions. Caperon, that's a better kick. Looked good off the boot, but hiding in a pocket of space defensively for the Blues was Hogg. His kick to Getty. Once again, rinse and repeat. Caperon with the intercept.
Let's see if he can go 3 from 3. Well done. That's a better kick from Dan Caperon, the captain.
And once again, it's wide. Hardy, 60 from home. Lower the eyes, and that's a better kick, and it's with Ted Closey. And the only query here you would think would be the distance. Ted Closey has a good long think about this one. Coming off 26 disposals, 13 tackles, 5 clearances. He had 8 inside 50s for Geelong last week up in Queensland. Made his debut late last season for the Catters. Will kick from all of 50. Jags out to the right late on to give himself the extra distance. Sends it on its way right to the line. Kept alive initially, I think, by Rowan, and then getting back there was Lewis to see it through for a behind. 2-3-15, the Cats, but peppering away. Carlton 1 straight 6. From the kick in again, it's Lockie Young coming up for disposal number 6. To the pack that waits for it. Up goes O'Keefe through his hands. Murdoch sorts his way through the traffic. Handball to Clark at the top of the 50. Hardy spots Gary Rowan. Great vision, great kick. And Rowan marks out in the right forward pocket for the Cats. That's the sort of kick that they need to find going forward, Geelong.
Look, other than 1 or 2 clangers, Geelong have been really clean and polished, particularly coming into their 50-metre arc.
Gary Rowan is working his way back from a back injury that hindered him all off-season. It was his first game upon return last week. 30 metres out. Knows where the goals are. Gary Rowan kicked plenty of them at senior level. That one just misses to the right-hand side. So for all the one-way traffic they've had, Geelong, they have just a 10-point lead. 2-4-16, Carlton 1 straight 6. We're approaching time on in the first quarter. A quarter really in terms of territory has been dominated by the Cats. Short from the kick in, it's with Quay. High ball down the wing, Nevitt in front position, O'Keefe the spoil. Clark waiting at ground level. Handball just had a little bit too much on it for Ballantyne, and the boundary line came quickly. Umpire calls for a throw in.
Not sure if we've got some ground ball stats, Brent, but I'd be saying that Geelong are well on top in that area. As soon as the ball hits the ground, they've been able to swoop.
O'Keefe decides to take that one out of the ruck. His handball was ineffective. Here comes Geelong again at ground level. Ballantyne about to be mown down by Ferranato. And just when the Cats look like they'll be going forward again, well, they will be. A free kick, said the umpire. In the back, I think the umpire said, against Ferranato. Ballantyne short to Hardy. Hardy's again going to go very, very wide. taking the mark. That must have been right on the paint of the boundary line is Shannon Neal. I guess if there's any solace in the fact that the Cats kept going inside 50, it is that they're having a lot of these shots from very tight angles.
You're right.
As I steal your pen, Dan. Sorry about that.
But we did see on that last shot from goal, there might be a breeze going from left to right here. So interesting kick here for Shannon Neal.
Tucked away deep in the right forward pocket. He kicked the first goal of the game. That one floats across the face of goal. And jumping in, Gary Rowan, who looks like he's well and truly over that back problem, if that's anything to go by.
Yeah, look, I think that's poor from the Carlton defenders. You don't want Gary Rowan,
no,
even though he's not the tallest player in the Geelong forward line, to have a run and jump at that ball. You just need to armbar him or impede his run. And three Carlton defenders looking at each other.
Gary Rowan with one behind a moment ago. Won't have any problems here. Bangs it through. And Geelong get their reward. They've got their third. And as we head into time on in the first quarter, the Cats go along to 3-4-22. Carlton stranded on 1 straight 6. Round 5. Smithies VFL action on afl.com.au and the AFL Live official app as well, as Rowan kicks the goal. His first of the afternoon. Brent Sternberg and Dan Winkle here with you. And I'd imagine if you're Carlton coach Luke Power, you'd be a little bit concerned with what you've seen in this first quarter.
Yeah, it's all on Geelong's terms at the moment. Their mids in Hardy, Clark, Closey, all up to 6 disposals. O'Sullivan across half back, also with 6 disposals. Young man from Dramana for Carlton, Billy Wilson. He's had the 7.
16 inside 50s to 4 in favour of the Cats. Carlton will get a bit of a reprieve here with the holding the ball decision. Nevitt stuck in the Heath Ramshaw tackle. Ramshaw's just got to go long and strong into the 50 and give the forwards a chance. They haven't had much in this quarter. Geelong set themselves defensively. Jecker through his hands. Handball came out the way of Nelson, who went without it for the Blues. He fights for it underneath. Clark emerged, got to his feet and then found Nevitt with the handball. And then out to Sinnott, who missed Buse. It's back in dispute on the half-back line for the Cats. Buse, handball to Sinnott, who runs right up the paint of the boundary and kept it in. Handball to Jai Clark, who balked one. Back with Nevitt. Nevitt's handball a little hot for Sinnott. And Aquay is happy to see that one bounce out of play. And that's probably one of the first times today where Geelong's link-up handball play has just gotten them into a little bit of trouble.
You're right. Hamish Sinnott's got a bit of toe,
yeah,
hasn't he? The young man who won the last year's Maskell medal. He's from Camperdown. That'll be the Hampton League medal, I think, Brent. Is it the Maskell medal?
Yes, yep. 3 games last year with Carlton's VFL team. Jumped ship this year.
Had a few decent players from Camperdown way of the Cats. There's a man who coaches Port Adelaide in the AFL from Camperdown.
Strong attack in there from Closey. Ramshaw got on the end of the handball and he's dumped by White of Geelong, and the umpire says that's holding the ball. Darcy Edmonds, in fact, that might have been out there for the Cats, who wins the free kick. Just backward of centre wing position. Geelong sit on a 16-point lead.
I think you might have got it right the first time in Todd White.
Did I say White?
Yeah, Darcy Edmonds is out here in the 50.
I was right with White. Geelong, long shot for Galton. Open goal square. It's just missed to the left-hand side. And another blemish for the Cats on the scoreboard.
Yeah, they're peppering the scoreboard now, the Cats. So what did Carlton do here? Do they go slow for a little while and just try and take some time off the clock? Or do they keep playing their fast game style, which they're renowned for? They like to move the ball quickly and move the ball forward.
Mark from the kick in Prouts, and then Prouts' kick off the boot was a bit of a tumbling one. It's marked by O'Sullivan. Once again, the Geelong brick wall that they've built across the halfway line. Comes up trumps. It's with Closey. Another entry for the Cats. Here comes Nevitt. Gave it a good effort, did Nevitt. Couldn't mark. Gets back after it at ground level and wins the footy. Fires the handball forward. Young couldn't locate the football. It's pinched by Sinnott. Wow. Swings onto the left and hit the post. He has had a prominent first quarter, Hamish Sinnott. He's pretty keen to keep his spot in this team. Another behind for Geelong. Carlton, you remember, jumped out of the gates last week. They kicked 7 goals straight in the first quarter. This week, quite the opposite, as Ramshaw bullets one in towards midfield. It's with Hogg. The overlap run from Wilson. Oh, put it on the head of his teammate. Big Conway come over and smashed it with the fist. Comes back to Prout. He's in the tackle of Closey. Ball came free. And it's holding the ball every day of the week and twice on Saturday afternoons at IKON Park.
Geelong haven't missed a tackle so far, have they? They keep wrapping Carlton up. They've been found wanting it a number of times.
Valentine's kick into the 50 was well trapped on the half volley from Bradkey. Handball out wide to Manor. Oh, gee, I'm surprised that's been paid 15. And the mark here to Oscar Riccardi, who slipped there but didn't come off his mark. So the umpire has told him to go back. Oscar Riccardi says, yeah, that's what I'm doing. He's going to have a look at the sticks. Of course, son of the great Peter, who probably had his most famous moment against the Blues, Peter Riccardi, all those years ago, the goal after the siren. Carlton players on the mark to this day claim that it was touched. Oscar's given it a fair crack. It's there.
Wowee. I reckon we've seen our first Smithy snag for the day, Brent.
Not all that dissimilar to Peter all those years ago. A Smithy snag, to be sure. Oscar Riccardi sinks one from the depths of the flanks, and Geelong have another. It's their fourth.
I was thinking we've seen similar kicks from out that way so far in this first quarter. I was thinking, Oscar, maybe just pop it up 10 metres out. Give your tools a chance to run and take a catch, but no, he went back and drilled it.
Well, initially it looked like he wanted to centre it. I mean, he did have that moment after the mark where he slipped up, and that's probably a rare example of where a player slipping actually helps their cause.
They need to stem the bleeding here, the Blues. Geelong are well on top. 10 scoring shots already in this game to just 2.
Lead and disposal getter on the ground is their key defender, Lockie Young, for the Blues. That is Billy Wilson on 8, who also plays down there. So that tells you a lot as the Blues try and get it out of the middle. It's with Archie Stevens into the middle. Kept away from Jekka by Moyer. Good work by Toby Conway getting back, and a handball to his mate who runs through half back. That was Buse, who worked the handball to White, who crafts a nice looking kick, and a solid mark taken by Hardy. And they've got their tails up, the Cats. Hardy's a kick out into the pocket. Aquay just did enough to put off the Geelong marking target. It's still in the pocket. Hughes gets free. Gets the handball to Buse from a standing start. His kick is well charged down by Marr. Lewis from Wilson. And now Ferranato and then Stevens. And Wilson again. This one has to find a teammate. It does. The mark is taken by Ned Carl at half back. And that will do us for the first quarter at IKON Park. That was well and truly dominated by Geelong. The Cats have a
2 to 72 Geelong's way, so a deficit of 30 at quarter time is quite a large number. Probably, if anything, maybe Carlton got away with Geelong not being able to hit the scoreboard as much as they would like in terms of goals. 4 goals out of the 20 inside 50s.
So we're underway for the second quarter. Clark brings the Cats immediately into the forward line, and Gary Rowan comes out. He's far too good for Dominic Aquay again on that occasion. A commanding mark out of the goal square, and he should go back and kick his second.
I thought the Carlton mids actually fought back late in that first quarter after Geelong were able to have some easy takeaways, and on that occasion another one. And Gary Rowan having a shot for goal.
It was their best first quarter of the season to date for Geelong. Gary Rowan piles on another one in the opening seconds of the second term, and they kick away. They've got an even 5-goal lead, barely 60 seconds into the second quarter.
They've got some veterans in this side, have Geelong, who are trying to find their way back into the AFL team. Gary Rowan is one of those. At the other end of the ground, Jed Buse as well. He's played the 4 VFL games so far this year, this being his 5th today. So with not many injuries at AFL level and plenty of talent on their list, there are some guys who possibly think they could be playing AFL football, but just can't crack it at the moment in a strong Geelong team.
I was going to mention that 15 AFL listed players in the team today for the Cats, 7 for the Blues. They did pull 3 of them out if you joined us late. Carlton win a rare centre clearance. Coming out off the half-forward line to mark for the Blues is McMahon, who kicked their lone goal in the first quarter. They've let a few very short kicks go in the early stages of this one. The umpires Here it is with Ramshaw. Inside 50, long towards the goal square. Comes to the foot of the pack. Carl threatens. It goes right to the line and it's escorted over the line and through for a minor score by Oisin Mullum. The umpires today, Lockie Coyne, Jordan Pearson, Flynn Kelly and Nick Yankovskis. It was remiss of me not to mention them in the first quarter. Geelong playing the city side of the ground. They've gotten to the centre wing position in a heartbeat. Hardy off to Clark. His kick a little untidy. Went out in front of Bradkey and bounced away from him, and Geelong have a throw in at half forward. We mentioned in that first quarter, Dan, Geelong only had to lay 6 tackles. That's how much they dominated with the Sherrin. That's generally how it works. If you've got the footy in your hands, you don't need to tackle.
And they're up to 34 marks of the Cats, but Carlton need to be able to bring the ball to ground. Too many uncontested marks for mine at the moment.
Got complete control of this game in every sense. Taking the defensive marks, the uncontested marks when they have possession, and on the scoreboard as well. Carlton got to try and fight their way back into this. Closely at the front of the stoppage, off to Clark. Kept the kick low down towards full forward, beyond the reach of Lewis. Gary Rowan, we know, is fast, but it bounces end on end and away from him. And another forward 50 stoppage to come for the Cats. You mentioned the experienced guys that they've got, Dan. They've got a lot of young midfield types that you'd have to think would fancy themselves of getting into this team sooner rather than later, with the retirements and some players that are nearing the end as well. Dangerfield and Duncan. Mitch Nevitt is one of them. Threw it right on the boot, floats it all the way to the line. Quay let it go. Lucky for him, it slammed into the goalpost.
And, well, the thing about their young mids is they're tough mids, like Closey, nose over the ball. Jai Clark, we know how tough he is. George Stevens.
Geelong come to the near side. Errant handball from the Blues. Conway fights at ground level. His handball was a turnover. Ramshaw. Prouts shares it with Young, and now back with Ramshaw. Oh, that's not a good handball. Put it on the head of Nelson, and it'll be a turnover. Mullen fires the handball forward to Closey, who arches the back, straightens on up from 35 and nails it. Carlton with all sorts of problems at IKON Park, trying to work their way through the Cats' defence with the handballs that came unstuck very quickly, and Closey makes them pay. And you've got to think, if they can't sort their way through the Cats' defensive structure kicking it, they couldn't do it on that occasion with the handballs either. Probably feeling a little bit helpless at the moment out there, some of the Carlton players, but that was a shocking handball from Ramshaw, one of their more experienced VFL listed players. Gave Luke Nelson no chance. Geelong sweating all over him.
The difference in polish and cleanliness is obvious so far in this game, Brent, isn't it?
Absolutely, as they stretch the margin to 6 goals. From the middle we go again. Conway had a couple of goes at the racket out. Clean bowled White, a beautiful pickup from Hardy. He swoops on in, sends it up to half forward. Closey tried to knock it back the way of George Stevens. Eventually got a handle on it. Uses it by hand to Stevens. Running on to take the mark again is White. Sends the Cats back into attack. Manor in front position. Little too tall for him. O'Keefe lost out to Clark. Clark's wrapped up by Prouts, who got some help from O'Keefe, who tumbles in over the top. Midfielders for Carlton working back quickly to get into defence and lend a hand, and that's been a sight that we've seen a lot through the opening quarter and 6 minutes. Geelong again from the stoppage, a little give to Closey and then to Clark. Now it's Manor, check side from deep in the pocket, got it going the wrong way, it's across the face of goal. Phillips one-on-one. Losing his footing there was Ballantyne. Phillips toe poked it to the boundary, and the umpire says it didn't show enough intent to try and keep it in the field of play. Ballantyne off to O'Sullivan from the 50. How easy did he make that look? He's flushed it to the line. Goal, Geelong. Connor O'Sullivan was celebrating from the moment it left the boot. It was a bit closer than I first thought. O'Sullivan kicks the goal. Geelong have 7.
Wow, that's 3 in what only 6 minutes in this second quarter on the back of centre clearance, but even that last stoppage we saw, Closey again, Jai Clark put his nose over the ball. Don't seem to have a real weakness here that I can identify at the moment, the Cats. Their defence is on top every time Carlton, albeit not often, have gone into their 50. And it's a great feeling as a defender when you can slink on down and kick one from 50, as Connor O'Sullivan did there.
Yeah, everything's feeling pretty easy right now for the Cats. For the Blues.
So that's okay there. Let's get some repeat stoppages.
Yep.
You don't have to win it, but at least halve it if you're the Carlton midfield.
It's Operation Stem the Bleeding at the moment. You mentioned that earlier, Dan. Conway, I thought he got a handball out of there. The umpire says holding the ball. Carlton get a little bit of luck there. It's with Archie Stevens, who pulls the kick nicely towards half forward. And it's well done there by Kuipers to call Hudson O'Keefe out of the contest. And Blake Kuipers will line it up from 50 metres out as good as directly in front. And you don't need me to tell you that Carlton need a goal.
Nice kick there. Nice hit up by Archie Stevens. Is he the brother of George?
Yes.
Yeah, so they're opposing brothers today.
The second time that they've played against one another. They played in the game that we had last year between the Future Stars and the All-Stars VFL match. As Kuipers leaps on into the kick. That too is going to pull up short. No mark for the Geelong defender back there. It was Conway. In fact, the ruckman in the goal square. We find ourselves at full forward for the Blues. Will White rushes on in and ties it up. Stevens brothers from South Warrnambool. Get back to that as Conway tries to take it out of the ruck. Dangerous handball on the last line. And then rushing it over eventually was Todd White of Geelong, and the Cats have a kick in. Come to the near side. O'Sullivan's allowed to take the mark. It went right over the head of the Carlton defender. It might have been Kuipers again. O'Sullivan back towards half forward. Ball comes to the front of the pack. Sinnott's threatening, but it doesn't come out. Gary Rowan stood up in the tackle of Michael Lewis, but how easy the Cats have got it to half forward again. 7:49 Geelong, Carlton 1-8 on what's turning into a difficult afternoon for the Blue Baggers. Ball ping-pongs around before it's gathered by Wilson. It's a good kick out towards the wing, and Ned Carl, who's had a quiet first half playing up forward for the Blues, comes out and marks. Kicks over the head of Ferranato, wrapped up in the tackle of Patrick Hughes.
Yeah, they've hardly been sighted, have they, Brent? Ned Carl and Ashton Moyer only had the one disposal up to quarter time, and we know what a start he had last week against Port Melbourne. Kicked 2 goals, the first 2 goals of the game.
Edmonds and O'Sullivan get involved again. Manor. That was Murdoch, I think, who tried to... No, Edmonds it was who tried to tap it onto his teammate. It went out of play. A little bit of afters.
I wonder what the Geelong backline's going to look like in a few years with O'Sullivan potentially being in there. They've got the young De Koning. And, gee whiz, they've got some talent there, haven't they?
Tall
Henry.
And scary, Dan. That's what it looks like. Working a little kick through the eye of the needle was Edmonds. Good work by Hardy to get it out to Clark. Toby Conway gets involved in the link-up play. Kicks into the 50. Doubling back Rowan, no mark. Manor swoops in. Closey puts it back towards the hot spot. Off hands. Bradkey's going to rove it. Strange things happening here for Geelong. Humphries around the body. Drops it in the buckets. And taking the overhead mark out in front of his opponent there is Hamish Sinnott. So you had Conway getting involved in the link-up play. You had the full forward, big Caelan Bradkey roving it. And now it's in the hands of Hamish Sinnott, who kicked 2 behinds in that first quarter.
Probably a little fortuitous, that kick by Lawson Humphries, but Sinnott having his 3rd shot on goal.
He's got it. No, just missed to the right-hand side. So you can make that 3 behinds now for the former Carlton VFL listed player Hamish Sinnott out of the GWV Rebels. And as you mentioned, Dan, Camperdown, the mighty Camperdown Footy Club. What can they do to try and stem the tide here? Massive fly! That's a Smithies snag hanger all in one. Blake Kuipers takes to the sky. What a grab. Can that lift the Blues? They've moved it on to Nelson in the middle of the ground. Forward they go. Mullen got the better of White and swings to the outer side. Now here is Riccardi, who gets onto the loose football. Down towards half forward. Nelson should cut it off for the Blues. He shares it with Prout on the boundary line on the outer side. Good defensive work there, cutting across Ballantyne. Haven't we seen some marks in the VFL this year?
We have. We saw one last week with young Hutchinson from Collingwood at Coburg. That was a spectacular mark. And then young Kuipers as well. But Oscar Riccardi, he had a 2-on-1 out here. They were on again, the Cats, but he just wasn't able to execute the kick.
Cats by 42 points, throw in on the outer side. Carlton just trying to knock it forward. Murkov goes off the ground. Humphreys, first one there for the Cats. Shrugged his way through a tackle. Handball to Hardy, whose kick was charged down. Ramshaw bursts onto the football for the Blues. Uses Young for support and then turns onto the boot inboard. Oh, had a couple of teammates there. They got their wires crossed and Geelong pouncing again. Clark, his handball knocked on cleverly into the 50. Rowan's getting dangerous. Doesn't give it to Manor. Instead gives it to Edmonds. Round the body. Open goal square. That's like shelling peas for Darcy Edmonds. Another goal for the Cats.
Yeah, the young man who played every game for GWS in the VFL last year. They like to share the ball around, do the Cats. They're certainly unselfish as well. Gary Rowan, who had his tail up, he's already kicked a couple of goals. Almost got the feeling that he might have tried to put number 3 on the board there, but no, well done. Nice sharing of the football there, and this scoreboard looking ugly for Carlton at the moment. Geelong extend their lead to 48 points.
It's gotten ugly quickly as well. 7 unanswered goals for Geelong. They did kick the first of the day through Shannon Neal, and then the Blues answered a few minutes later by Liam McMahon, off the boot of Liam McMahon, I should say, and then 7 in a row for the Cats to blow the margin out to 48 points, 14 and a bit minutes into the second quarter. Murkov cleared the initial area with the hit-outs. Over the top in the tackle for the Blues there. I think that might have been Ramshaw.
We talked about the disposal differential at quarter time, which was 30 Geelong's way. It's now blown out to 48, so well on top here.
Here's Marr, frustrated, just trying to burst his way clear. Humphreys has been terrific across half-back for Geelong. Bouncing handball found Capperon. Jecker, the sidestep, and the vision as well. And the corridor is available to the Cats, and they use it. Mullen off half-back. Kick it to the bootlaces of Nevitt. In swoops Hughes. Handball to Nevitt. Handball to Manor. Dragged down while he was on his back. He tried to get the kick away. Nevitt pounces on it. Breaks the pain of 50. Turned it over. Lockie Young, who's been almost a one-man band back here for Carlton in this first half. Disposal number 12. To full back, and it's McMahon. Looks like he might have been put behind the ball to try and stem the tide. Long kick to the outer side. Phillips just took his eye off the footy when it arrived. He applies the tackle on Mullen. Umpire waved play on. Initially, the ball does come out. Flipped up by O'Sullivan. Handball forward looking for Manor, but it was taken away by Lewis. Getty and Carlton starting to get their hands on the footy here. Phillips put that kick on the head of Will White. Boundary line threatens. Boundary line wings out. And a throw in centre wing out of side. They're just not able to create enough when they do get that footy across half back. It's chalk and cheese as opposed to the Cats. We saw that play a moment ago where they just went straight through the middle. Carlton playing a little wider. Trying to use, I think, the boundary line as their friend. It is on this occasion they settle for the stoppage. Ramshaw went without it. Hughes sends it back into attack. And here is Liam McMahon once again with a solid defensive mark.
I think you made that observation that they might be putting one behind the ball, the Blues. Yes, they're trying to stem the bleeding here.
Moyer receives from his teammates, and running by was Hogg. Better build up here from the Blues. Mark's taken by Stevens. Kicks to a 2-on-1. Jecker comes over and breaks it up. Nelson in the pocket. Around the body back towards full forward. It's knocked away by Jai Clark. Jecker takes Nelson over the boundary line with football in tow.
I noticed when Toby Conway's having a breather, Shannon Neal goes in the ruck. I really like his second efforts. He does follow up. So that's another string to his bow.
Umpire wheels it back in. Murkov assumed front position. Knocks it back to the boundary. It's chased down by Jecker. Hardy. Prefer to see this one out, and that he does. So 8-8-56 is Geelong. Carlton 1-2-8.
So Dom McQuay, the free behind the ball here for the Blues.
The Blues win the clearance. Murkov out of the ruck to Marr, who turns onto his left boot and kicks it out of bounds on the full. Xavier Marr, who's returning this season after tearing his ACL last year in round 1 in Carlton's game against Geelong. Geelong move it swiftly to the outer side. Edmonds kicked that beautiful goal earlier on in the quarter. Good hit-up pass for Mullen. Humphreys gets involved. Geelong on the build again. Clark's kick goes wide. Nevitt couldn't do what Toby Conway did in the first quarter and take a one-handed brilliant mark. And the umpire, well, it doesn't matter because he's given him a free kick. The ump against Dominic Equay. Must have been in that marking contest. So the ball is with Mitch Nevitt. Kicks long to put the Carlton backline under pressure again. Bradkey set himself, went over his head. Wilson picks it up, sends it back towards half forward for the Blues. It's Humphrey and it's White. White gathered cleanly. Humphreys gathered him and then fell flat on his back. Just a little bit overzealous in his attempts to tackle. Opportunity for Carlton to go forward here. Phillips a good kick to Murkov. And the big man, 210 centimetre ruckman, will turn and have a look from the paint of 50. Got great ruck craft, we know, being that tall. I'm not sure what his set shot goal kicking from 50 metres out is like. We might be about to find out.
If I was to put a shekel on this, Brent, I think I'd go the way of Geelong being able to kill the ball here. I'm not sure if Murkov has got the distance.
1 goal in his 29 VFL games coming into today. It's gone right to the line. They didn't quite kill it, the Cats, but Humphreys is there, and he has the outlet kick to the outer side, and it's with Riccardi, who will look up ahead and see Manor. And here go Geelong again in the slingshot play. Over the top to White, who was confronted but worked his way through it, and then his kick was dealt with relatively well by Equay. Didn't take the mark but broke it up, and a stoppage on the outer side.
So the game's changed in the last 5 minutes. Carlton putting a player behind the ball, so Geelong's ball use has to be supreme. They've been able to transition out of defence quite well, but just broken down a couple of times here.
I know it's easy to ask this question after the fact, Dan, but are you surprised the Blues didn't do that sooner?
No, I think they wanted to trust their system, but now with the margin out to 48 points, they had to do something.
Yep. Conway tracks the footy on the boundary line, kicks right out into the pocket. Bradkey took the mark and he took it clean, but he was just the wrong side of the boundary. So Quay in the back pocket for the Blues will take over.
Yeah, my view, if they had just kept on playing the one-on-one style of football, you might even be seeing a 10-11 goal lead at the moment. So they've put one behind the ball. I think Geelong are comfortable with that. They're okay with that. They trust their ability to use their polish and their skills to be able to still hit their targets.
Conway's taken a wonderful juggling mark. Again, he goes wide with the kick. Equay and Bradkey. Bradkey got there at the fall of it. Lewis ferrets the handball out to his teammates, who went in and out of a couple of tackles and then just ran over the boundary. Trying to use it as his ally, and the umpire says, all good, throw it in. Geelong having their way with the Blues here at IKON Park, round 5 Smithies VFL action. Geelong have kicked the last 7 goals of the match to blow the margin out to 48 points. We've had a bit of a stalemate in the last 5 minutes or so, but that might be about to end here as there's a free kick pulled out of the ruck and it's going the way of big Toby Conway.
Just able to assume front position was Conway there, so got his hands full. O'Keefe, good challenge for the young man, 19-year-old, against the slightly more experienced 21-year-old.
This will be disposal number 10 for the emerging Geelong ruckman. Kicked it behind already. 10 hit-outs, 3 clearances. Just to make it 8 goals in a row for the Cats. Conway puts it straight through the Tom Riddle. This is turning into a very good afternoon for the boys from IKON Park. They blow the margin out to 9 goals.
Yeah, straight through the Peter Siddle, and that's good for the big man who missed one earlier. And a ruckman who can kick goals are worth their weight in gold.
We were talking about the fact that there might be some opportunities about to open up in the next year or two in the midfield of Geelong. That includes the ruck. You know,
Yes.
You wouldn't think Reece Stanley would be too far away.
Well, they're almost experimenting at the moment. It's almost 1 week on, 1 week off with Reece Stanley and Toby Conway.
He's played 2 games already this season. He's a local Geelong boy out of the Falcons. And we know how much teams in the AFL like to pinch ruckmen from other clubs that have been developing. You know, the Tigers did it with Nankervis. The Cats even did it years ago with Reece Stanley getting him out of St Kilda. So Geelong would be pretty desperate to get him in the team and keep him in the team to convince him to stay.
Oh, I think with Reece Stanley coming towards the end of his career, the opportunities are going to be there in the next few years.
Carlton to half forward. Ma, sweeping handball. Monahan's had a quiet first half, had to wait for it on the bounce. Up over the top goes O'Keefe, almost took it going to ground. Moyer's under siege. Look at the Geelong defenders back there, but it's well won by Prout and undid his good work by handballing it straight to Humphreys. Hughes kicked it into the legs of Hogg. Got it back. Handball for the boundary line, didn't quite go out. Mars caught by Clark, who is having a terrific second quarter. He's worked his way up to 16 disposals. Geelong take the advantage of which there wasn't much. Head over the football, Getty. McQuaid did well to handle the hot hand pass that came his way. Ferranato back down towards half forward. Oh, Mullen, I think that was stood his ground, cop one higher, unlucky not to get a free kick. Moyer. Handball back to Monahan, who wheels around, went on the outside of the boot. It was all a little untidy, as they have been really for the entire first half. Carlton, it's out of bounds on the full.
He's still finding his way in the game is Rob Monahan, the Category B rookie from Ireland. Has a hurling and rugby background. I'm assuming hurling is the sport, not the Saturday night activity.
No. Yeah, it's only his, I think it's 3rd or 4th game of Aussie rules football. I hadn't played it before coming out here. Hogg's got a problem here. Knocked towards the boundary, and I think they're the ones that Dan Winkle would like to see paid insufficient intent.
Oh.
Murdoch just knocked that straight over the line.
The other Irishman today, O'Sheen Mullen, who's played the 8 AFL games. I remember watching him on a couple of occasions before he played his first AFL game, and he's just taken to the game so quickly. Wasn't enough to stop him from going to Italy last week for a wedding.
Back again, and I wouldn't imagine it'd be too long before he's back into the senior team.
Well, I know you're always going to compare Irishman to Irishman, but he's got that same power and poise as Zach Tui does.
From the spillage, it's White. Handball conceded a bit of ground. Murdoch ridden into the ground. They fight for it just inside forward 50 for the Blues. Murdoch a little pirouette and then kept his bearings enough to give it to White. Now it's with Buse, who kicks out towards Shannon Neal, who did so well to get past Lemmy. Read that far better in flight, big Shannon Neal.
Yeah, that is Lemmy's challenge. He's the one-on-one challenge. I know he can pick off his opponent, but can he beat a man one-on-one? That's going to be interesting for me over the next year or so for Harry Lemmy.
Caperon back to Buse, now to Closey. Closey wants the middle. It's an aggressive kick. It's not going to pay dividends, although Phillips had it and then lost it. Edmonds had his pocket picked in the middle. Carlton do have numbers here. White, handball out wide to Young. He gets a favourable bounce. He spots up his teammate on the City side in Kuipers. In for Phillips. Carlton in search of their second goal. They go out into the pocket. It was a well-placed kick there from Phillips, and Luke Nelson marks right on the paint of the boundary. And he's going to take ownership of this kick. He fooled them all, runs around, round the corner, hit the belly of the football. It's gone across the face. Carlton still a chance. Ma, handball to Ferranato, was crunched as he put it onto his boot. That was good pressure coming in at the last there. It's another behind for the Blues. 139. They are a laborious 139. Geelong 9-8-62.
It actually was a good kick by Tom Phillips when he hit Luke Nelson there. He looked up, he saw 5 Geelong defenders, and Luke Nelson was able to hit Luke Nelson. So well done. Got to take the small wins when you're this far behind, Brent.
Yep. Manna got it from Conway, kicks towards half forward. Well, Rowan was outnumbered, but it got out the back, and that's where he found it. Sends it towards Riccardi, who had to wait a little while for the ball to drop, but it dropped into his arms, and he takes the mark. And again, the Cats have gone from coast to coast, and again, the selfless play. Riccardi has kicked a beauty today, and on this occasion, he thought, I'll give it off to Jamison Ballantyne in a better position than I.
That's really lazy defence for mine there, Carlton. Had to close that space down and not allow Ballantyne to run into it.
Ballantyne's come across from the Footscray VFL team, played 4 games for the Doggies last year. And he's going to dink through another goal. No, he's dinked it into the goal post.
I think that's up to 3 posters, maybe 4 today.
It's been a few.
Young man from Portland. They've got a number of players playing in this game today from the west of Victoria, haven't we? Portland and Warrnambool and Koroit.
Yeah, you assume that Geelong would recruit from there, but even the Blues have a handful from out that way. The Hampton Footy League and further west. To the outer side, here's Ma. Feeds the handball through to Ferranato, who saw an empty 50. He gave the handball to Will White, who runs to 40, had a long, hard look, and when the opportunity came to him, he nailed it. And Carlton, at long last, have their second goal.
And smart play by young Ferranato there. Maybe his basketball background helped him out there, because he looked up, he saw 2 Geelong defenders sitting in the 50, and if he had just kicked it in, the ball would have been coming back over his head, but he was able to run and carry it through, make a really good decision in a short period of time. And Will White, that's his 7th goal for the year already. He's another young man from the area we've been talking about in Western Victoria, South Warrnambool man.
Yeah, premiership there last year in the team that had the 2 Stevens brothers that we were talking about as well. All of them in that particular premiership side. We were talking about those brothers earlier. That was the only game that George Stevens, that's the Geelong Stevens, the only game he actually played for South Warrnambool last year. He only got into the team that day because the Rebels had been eliminated from the Coates Talent League. So the Blues have their second goal. Can they build some momentum late in the first half? Umpire sees a throw in there. It looked pretty obvious from up here. Despite the pleas of innocence from Ted Closey. Approaching half an hour gone in the second quarter. Ma put the kick right over the head of his mate in Ramshaw, who got it on the bounce, then lost his footing. Had to get rid of it. Geelong closed in, and Clark finds Hardy. All alone at half back towards the outer side, where the run comes from Ballantyne. Sweeping handball. Geelong on the build again. Rowan got free in the pocket. Manna, the short option, takes the mark. And as we mentioned, he knows all about kicking goals at this ground. And I reckon he might take the onus on himself, Sean Manna. Will kick from all of 50 metres out.
Good decision again by Hamish Sinnott. I know he hasn't been able to be rewarded for his efforts on the scoreboard. Kicked the 3 behinds, but was just able to turn his body, lower his eyes, and hit his teammate on that occasion.
Sean Manna swings out to the right, works it back. Has he worked it back enough? No. Through for another minor score. That's the 10th for the Cats. So 9-10-64 they are. Sean Manna, who kicked 40 goals as a small forward / midfielder in 21 games for Werribee last year. Great to see him finally get his opportunity in the big time. McQuay, careful kick in the dying embers of the second quarter, finds Ferranato. Blues down by 49 points. It's going to be a big half-time deficit for them. Just a 2-goal first half. Kick down the line. Conway in front. Pipers did enough to bring it to ground. That's where he found it, and he handballed it straight to Todd White. O'Sullivan's handball under pressure. Kept on coming forward, though. Now Hughes bursts on through. A little fumble right on the boundary line. Closey with a great handball. Sinnott will get himself clear. One more handball over the top. Back to Sinnott, round the body. That is a stunning team goal from the Cats. And a Smithies snag to be sure. And that's one that Coach Mark Corrigan will be delighted about.
They were just composed in a tight space, weren't they? Once again, Closey, I think he called in that play with his hands, was sensational. And what's noticeable for Hamish Sinnott is his speed.
Yeah, into the side today, 106 centimetres. That's his first goal, by the way, in the VFL against his former side. So a goal for Geelong, their 10th. All of 32 minutes into the second term. They've kicked 6 goals, 4 in this quarter, the Cats. Blues have kicked 1 goal, 3. That goal gets the margin back out to 55 points. And once again, the Blues just happy to kick to contests down the line. And if they don't mark it, they don't look like getting it at ground level, as that centre bounce will be called back. Geelong with not just the class, but also the intent to get to it. Clark and Closey getting involved. Carlton, many problems as the Cats come walking out of the middle again. Hardy lowered the eyes. Out of the goal square comes Neal, who reached for it. Manor turns onto the boot and kicks it behind. It's no score. And that'll do us for the first half here at IKON Park, where it's been one...
Transparent here, and note that they are a little diluted with talent, and we knew that before the game. They're even more diluted now with Rob Monahan, Billy Wilson and Alex Murkoff, 3 of their listed players on the bench at the moment, probably just managing their time.
Cats are going to the left of your screen. The Blues on Friday named 10 AFL listed players for this one, and then they pulled 3 of them out prior to the bounce. So no Jackson Binns, Sam Durden or Alex Chincotta.
And look, they're a victim of their injury list at AFL level, aren't they? I mean, I looked at it during the week. I think there was 14 players on that list, as opposed to Geelong only had like a handful of players.
That affects the whole club, obviously. You know, you've got to take players out that would be playing in this team. They go up into the seniors, and then you get the local guys that you've recruited to the VFL list that then get a game. Tests your depth to every degree. As Carlton move it towards the outer side. Lockie Young, who was one of their better players in the first half, put that one on the head of Marr. Capron come over the top, but Carlton reclaim possession. Marr with a short kick up to Nelson. 50 metres from home. Oh, he's called to play on. That was a hot call. Nelson still had the presence of mind to hit up the young man, Bailey Lambert, on the lead, who is one of those players that we were just mentioning, VFL listed, who comes into the team today for his second game. Didn't see a lot of him in the first half, I might add.
No, he only had the one disposal. I think it was a hand pass. He was a competent player for Frankston in his time there. Bailey Lambert kicked 3 goals out here a couple of weeks ago against the Pies, so he's got some ability at the level.
It's his 30th VFL game. Deep in the pocket, has scuffed the kick a little. Up goes O'Keefe, comes to ground. Humphreys doesn't concede. Humphreys treads water on the goal line, and then eventually steps over the line. Well, that's why he didn't want to take it over initially. And the umpire comes in and says, deliberate, and I've got to say, that is a shocking call.
Well,
that's why players have so much trepidation. They think they know the rule, and then the umpires don't help them. It costs the team a goal. Moyer bangs it through, and that was all a bit of a debacle.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind some clarification on that myself, Brent. Is he considered to be under pressure even if he was dancing
well,
a little?
Well, this is the thing. It has to be physical pressure. But if you say physical pressure, we could have Lawson Humphreys dancing on the goal line all day because Carlton are going to corral him.
Correct. So the Carlton forward was only within half a metre of him.
Yeah.
You'd suggest. So does he have the right to be able to do what he did?
Well, if Lawson Humphreys had taken that through in the first instance, I wonder what the call might have been if he just fumbled it. Anyway, it's history now. Moyer kicks the goal. The Blues cop a bit of a break. They've got their 3rd of the afternoon. Moyer, who started last week like a house on fire, you might remember, kicks his first goal. Carlton 3-3-21. Geelong 10-10-70. And can that start Carlton's long climb back into the match? Oh, Nevitt roved that sweetly off the Conway hit, and then out of the goal square comes big Shannon Neal, who might have cop one in the eyeball coming through. That's how you get the ball out of the middle and into the forward line.
On so many occasions today, they've been able to waltz the ball through the front of the stoppage of Geelong.
They've looked really clean and slick, haven't they, on a couple of occasions. Clean breaks out of the centre. Shannon Neal has one goal already today. He kicked the first goal of the afternoon, the laconic kicking style, and from the moment that jumped off the boot, he knew where it was going. And Geelong have the immediate response. Neal has his second, and the Cats lead by 55 again.
We talked about apprenticeships in the second quarter, didn't we? Players who are almost auditioning for a role over the next few years. And Shannon Neal, you would think, would be auditioning for a role similar to Tom Hawkins, Toby Conway for Reece Stanley, and O'Sheen Mullen for Zach Toohey.
Yeah, so it's his fourth season on the list at Geelong. Neal has played 6 games, one this year, which was last week against Brisbane. Have you seen enough of him at this level anyway, Dan, to suggest that he can play that role up forward and then into the ruck? When he was drafted, he was probably known more as a ruckman.
No, I haven't. And the jury is still out.
Yep.
But he is growing into his body, and sometimes bigger players do take a little more time. Would he have had more opportunities at another club? I think so. So it's just the ability that when he gets his opportunity to have the consistency at the level. Kicked the 3 goals in his only opportunity this year at senior level.
Cats have gone forward again meantime, and Gary Rowan comes out and takes the mark. Yeah, still only 21. Shannon Neal will turn 22 in July. Gary Rowan hunched over this one. Sends it on its way. Does it hold the line? It does. We've got a great look at that one from where we're situated. Fluted with the right-hand goal post, but Gary Rowan kicks the goal, and that's his third. 3 goals, 1 from just 7 disposals. Not bad. And Gary Rowan, we know, will be one that will get back into the team once he gets a few minutes in the legs. And this is the benefit of having a reasonable, compared to Carlton anyway, Geelong that is, clean bill of health. You're able to bring these players back slowly through the reserves and get minutes into their legs, so when they do come back into the senior team, they're cherry ripe.
Yeah, well, Jed Hughes is a perfect example of that. Missed a little bit of footy over the pre-season, and Chris Scott was very open about the fact that he probably needed a couple of games at this level to make his way back in, but this is his 5th game at the level, so Jed might be thinking, wow, you know, I've really got to fight for my spot here.
Well, he'll be thinking, I'm fit and ready to go. When can I get back in? As Hughes shrugs the tackle. Geelong are coming forward again. Neal fought his way to the front. Couldn't mark. Bradkey with the handball to Conway. It's the land of the Giants down there for the Cats. Conway kicks another. Neal couldn't mark. Bradkey roves. Conway goals. Who needs small forwards?
Well, I remember Mark Fridge Roberts, who was a big unit when he was at the Bears in North Melbourne, and I think he played a little bit of football at the Swans. He was an exceptional crummer, and he didn't look like a crummer, but it goes to show that anyone at this level can still act as a crummer.
So you were only allowed to get involved in that play in the forward line for Geelong if you were 196 centimetres or taller. Step aside, little guys.
But look, Alex Murkov, who's just come back into this Carlton team, he's a little bit rusty, definitely. He just has to be careful here that he can match Conway's running ability as well as his ruck dominance. Here he is again.
67-point lead is the game highest. Conway is going to be penalised for holding the ball. Here's Archie Stevens, who swings onto the boots. McMahon back up into the forward line, but peeling across is the spare man there in Humphreys. In towards half-back, down on one knee goes Archie Stevens. Morrish medal winner in the Coates Talent League last year. Finished equal with Kobe McKercher. Missed out on being drafted. Here it is with White on the outer wing. This is Todd White. On a long lead is Manor. Geelong methodically down the line, in no hurry, obviously. 67-point lead. Manor puts it back into the mix. Geelong, plenty of representation. Up goes Gary Rowan, and for the second time in this quarter, takes a telling contested mark. And they look incredibly shaky to start this third quarter, Carlton, with those long balls coming into their defensive 50.
They do it. And look, I will say that I've only seen young Lemmy on one occasion live prior to this, and he's got some real attributes. But as I said, this is his challenge, to be able to defend that ball coming in to 50 against an opponent, as opposed to being able to come off his man and win his own footy.
Sorry, Dan. Gary Rowan's got goal number 4. And Geelong are on their way to kicking a big score here. They've got goal number 14. Gary Rowan from just 8 disposals. Every second disposal he's had has gone through the big sticks for a goal. And Gary Rowan, when he does get back into the senior team, depending on when he gets there, I suppose, he does have a milestone coming up. He has 192 AFL games to his name.
So the thing about Gary Rowan, and you might just have his age there on your profile sheet there, Brent.
32.
He's 32, but he's still got his speed. And quite often 32-year-olds might be slowing down a little bit, but that's Gary Rowan's X factor. Yes, we know he's a low possession player, but he's clean and he's quick. And it doesn't take much for him to have an impact on a game.
Part of the Geelong Premiership team a couple of years ago. The discourse on Gary Rowan going into that finals series, you might remember, is how he just didn't failed to fire in so many of Geelong's finals matches. He became the scapegoat a little bit when they were losing all of those preliminary finals, Gary Rowan. But from memory, he had a good final series that year in 2022. Part of Geelong's thumping of his former team, of course, Sydney in 2022. Kick out of the 50 from the Blues is intercepted by Mullen, who sends it back into the 50. Brad Key and also Shannon Neal. Take your pick. Neal takes the mark, and he'll line up for another for the Cats. He'll line up for his third as well. And I think the Geelong players out there, as we see Toby Conway coming for a rest, the Geelong players, I think, smell a bit of blood right now in terms of the Carlton defenders one-on-one. So they have no fear in just putting it in there.
What's not helping them is the inability right now for Alex Murkoff to get back and assist. And that's more so, we talked about the sad injury he had in terms of his heart condition. And you'd think that it's going to take him some time to adapt back to the level. I think it's today, he's only his second game back, I think, is Alex Murkoff. Yep. And at the moment, just watching him, he's really not being able to move outside of a radius of about 20 to 30 metres. Look, I know he's a big guy, a little bit cumbersome as well, and his strengths are in other areas. So they just have to accept that at the moment, it's not going to happen for him in that area. And hopefully, the more football he gets, the better he gets, and he might be able to start to impact games a little bit more.
So Shannon Neal kicks his third goal. Yeah, Murkoff returning from a leaking aortic valve that was found. It took a 7-hour surgery to correct that. I mean, that's a big surgery and a big thing to be returning from. I was reading an interview during the week that he did in the weeks after that when he returned to training, and he said that he was exhausted just walking up the stairs into the function room to do that interview. Jai Clark wins a free kick and dabs a little kick in towards half forward. It's all Geelong at IKON Park. Hardy, oh man, out into the pocket and standing all alone and taking the mark is Hamish Sinnott, who will run around. And you reckon he'd bend it through, and he does. And they are just piling on the goals here, the Cats. They've reached the ton already. We're 13 minutes into the third quarter. And if Carlton aren't careful, this is going to be a 100-point loss, or well north of that. And very quickly, the 55-point halftime lead has blown to 85 points. It's gotten there in, like I said, just over 13 minutes.
So Hamish Sinnott spent a little bit of time on the wing, and half forward today now has Billy Wilson as his matchup. He probably would have been travelling down the highway earlier this morning thinking, I hope I have a handful of disposals. And
got Michael Lewis down here, sorry to cut you off, Dan, who
looks a bit ginger, doesn't he?
Yeah, a little bit lame.
Yeah.
Trainer down there having a look. Oh, geez, down goes Murkov heavily in the ruck contest. After the loose football is Jai Clark. His handball a little hot for Shannon Neal. Moyer bursts through, trying to get something good going for the Blues. Murkov and back to Ma. It's a nice kick looking for McMahon, who takes a solid overhead mark. Liam McMahon, who has a goal to his name today, will go back and have a rare look for the Blues. Wonderful kick going in, though, from Xavier Ma. Looks like he's recovering all the time from his ACL tear of last season.
Well, that was a rare win for the Blues in terms of centre clearance. Looked like Geelong were going to clear that ball, but they were just able to prevent that from happening. 26-16 the clearances Geelong's way.
Liam McMahon to the edge. Legends stand end of the ground. It's got right underneath the kick, but it's straight. And the Blues pull one back. McMahon has his second. Subdued celebration, as you might expect. I would think that perhaps some of the Carlton fans in attendance today that have looked forward to the double-header, senior teams going at it at the MCG, they might have already left, I suspect. I think they know that the result here today has already been decided. Just a matter of the final score. Carlton and Geelong doing battle at the MCG in a couple of hours' time. That'll be an interesting contest.
Look, I like this move here. Carlton throwing Bailey Lambert in the middle. He's predominantly played as a forward for them this year, but he does know how to put his head over the football. Courage is probably his number one quality. So let's see what happens here with number 80, Bailey Lambert.
Neal in the ruck for Geelong with Conway on the bench. Again, it's Nevett who roves it beautifully. Sends the Cats into attack. Manor beaten by the bounce. Wilson, handball to Getty. Worked his way through the traffic nicely. Aquay. Oh, lucky is quick because Sinnott was closing. Sinnott's pretty quick as well, to be fair. We've learnt that much today. Kick coming out from Aquay, no good. Mullen and Jekka. And back to half forward.
Oh, nice.
One-handed. Seen a few of those today. Sinnott, Closey. Dabs it on the outside of the boot. Another for the Cats. Ted Closey adds his name to the score sheet. In fact, I think that's his second. So that'll be 5 multiple goal kickers now for Geelong.
And whilst Emerson Jekka hasn't had too much to do today, only had the 7 disposals, that's the second occasion today he's been able to win his own footy and use the middle of the ground with just a lovely weighted kick.
Been repurposed a little bit at Geelong in those seasons at Hawthorn, playing mostly at Box Hill. I mean, he was frequently injured, unfortunately, but more of a sort of high-flying forward that could take a grab.
Yeah, well, Box Hill did play him a lot in defence last year, and he showed some real signs for mine. I was surprised perhaps he didn't get an opportunity at senior level. He did have a little bit of an issue with his competitiveness one-on-one, but certainly his ability to read the ball in the air and his kicking skills for a big man are quite impressive.
13 games at VFL level for Box Hill last year. Fights on again for the footy. Aquay with an aggressive tackle. I think that was poor old Jai Clark tied up underneath all of that. I shouldn't say old, I should say young Jai Clark. Nevitz, another clearance. Bangs it into the 50. Getty reaches for it. Oh, Wilson handballed it right into the face of Lockie Young, who provided the tackle. The ball was jarred free the way of Logan Prout, and now Nelson. First season at the Blues, coming over from Coburg. He played more than 50 games for the Burgers. I'm sure he would have been delighted that they were finally able to get on the winners list last week. Handball to his teammate there in Hogg. Conway's back on the ground but dropped the mark. O'Sullivan's in trouble here. Taken down. How will the umpires see that? We'll get a ball up. Geelong 17-10, 112. The Blues 4-3, 27. Might go around the grounds and get some scores from the other games in just a moment. Geelong win another clearance here. Conway's had a bit of ground ball work to do today. Kick going forward for the Blues. Sails wide, horribly wide. It's out of bounds on the full.
I think that's going to be the next step in his evolution as an AFL player for mine, Toby Conway. His ability to be able to improve his marking. And quite often it doesn't mean you have to take 8 or 10 marks. It's just the ability to at least impact and maybe 3-4 marks a game. He's had 3 today, but he's had a couple of opportunities where he just hasn't been able to complete his good work. He's got to the contest.
And their field kicking in a couple of passages of play in this quarter, Geelong, has just devastated the Blues. That kick there from Sinnott into Manor, who will line up for goal. We do have one result in the books from earlier today. The Suns have beaten Port Melbourne by 5 points at ETU, so that one went right to the wire.
Wow, I looked at the score about 15 minutes ago. Brent and Port were about 3 or 4 goals up there, so that's a big win for the Suns.
Here's Sean Manor looking to add his name to the goal-kicking sheet for the Geelong, and he does. And the Cats pile on goal number 18. It's the 11th, unless I'm miscounting, the 11th individual goal kicker for the Cats. Yeah, disappointing loss there from Port Melbourne. They had a lead here at three-quarter time last week, you might remember, before they were run down by the Blues. And I know during the week their fitness and their ability to run out games was questioned, so it looks like that's hurt them again.
Well, they were 7 points up out here last week against Carlton, and Carlton were able to run all over them in that last quarter. I know Frankston were able to get them with their speed and burst a few weeks back.
We've got a close one out at Fankhauser Reserve. 5-2, 32 apiece between Southport and Brisbane. That's at the midway stages of the second quarter. Here at IKON Park, after that goal to Sean Manor, we have a 91-point ball game. Carlton are coming forward though. Ramshaw and then to Ferrinado. Put it out in front of Lambert, who kept his head. Handball came the way of Nelson, who's normally a pretty good finisher on the run, Luke Nelson. And he showed it right there, the former Burger. Carlton get a clean break out of the middle, and they've got their 5th goal.
Sometimes when you're this far behind, what's the deficit now? We're 85 points. All you're looking for is small wins. Rays of light that you can pick out of the game. And for mine in this quarter, Luke Nelson has been one of those. He's only had the 9 disposals, but been prominent in this third quarter. As you mentioned, he's had the experience with Coburg. Played there for a number of years.
Yeah, originally recruited to the VFL from Noble Park. He actually spent the season on Richmond's VFL list prior to COVID. It might have even been during COVID and then ended up at Coburg. Coburg, we know, have fallen on hard times in the VFL in recent years. But a good win over Collingwood last week, as we'll have the centre bounce recalled.
Yeah, I've seen them a little bit over the last few weeks, Coburg, and they're a plucky team. They're actually added a little bit to their midfield. They're a tough team now. Unfortunately, Hugo Brumell wasn't available for them yesterday, so that didn't help them going down to Frankston yesterday.
Yeah, Frankston 11-10-76 defeating the Burgers 8-11-59. We've had games all week being Anzac Day weekend, if that makes any sense, as Rowan spreads it to the outer side. It's Ballantyne in front of Phillips. Showed a good first step there to get through the tackle and then lost the footy. Goes back and wins it and shares it with Buse. Good play from the Cats. Kick going forward. That was from Manor, who hits up the long lead of Caelan Bradkey. You'd fancy would be a little bit too far out to score here. It's past 23 minutes played in quarter number 3. Although he twindles the footy in his hands, he might back himself. Launches into it from 55. It's going to go right to the goal line. The big pack awaits. Off hands and through for a minus score. Tigers, the Richmond Tigers that is, beat Casey. 15-5-95. Richmond, Casey 11-9-75. Williamstown surprised me a little bit with their thumping win over Werribee earlier in the week. 15-11, 101 Williamstown. Werribee 7-7, 49. The Giants with a win yesterday over North Melbourne. The G-Men 13-16, 94 defeated the Kangas 9-13, 67 as the Blues go into the 50. Conway did well to keep it away from the Carlton forward. Stevens and O'Sullivan combined, and a good kick for Nevitt, who will see an open 50. His kick comes out a little wider. I reckon that was a bump ball from Hughes, but the umpire pays the mark. And we mentioned Frankston winners last night over Coburg. The Suns winners earlier today over the Borough. A couple of games kicking off very shortly as well, as O'Sullivan hangs it high to the goal square. Knocked away from Nevitt. The ricochet's gone the way of Manor. Bradkey. Handball. Ballantyne turned on a dime. White hooks it back over the shoulder. Good body use there from Phillips to keep the Geelong player out of the marking contest and take the mark.
When the results already been determined, it's a good opportunity to experiment a little. Looks like they're doing this with Ashton Moyer, Carlton, number 43, who we know has played predominantly as a forward here in his first year, but now he's getting a crack of it in the midfield.
He looks a likely type, Ashton Moyer, as we're going to have a 50-metre penalty here, which will take, I think this is Nelson again on the outer side, might take him to within scoring range. Kicked the first 2 goals last week, Ashton Moyer. A bit of a live wire, got some tricks.
Yeah.
Knocking on the door, another one for the Blues.
But a good opportunity now with the result in doubt, not in doubt, to enhance his education, so to speak.
Yep. Yeah, play him behind the footy and learn some things back there. And he's probably going to have the opportunity to learn a lot with how this game's going. Luke Nelson kicked the last goal for the Blues. Out at right half forward. Again, runs out to open up the space for him. It's off target or on target, depending how you look at it. Crashed into the behind post. No further score. Moyer from the Glenelg Tigers in the Sandful. Maybe Carlton's best ever player was recruited from South Australia.
What, Mark Majizak?
Was Kernahan from Glenelg?
Yes, he was. Yes.
Yeah. Second guessing myself there, Dan. Cats have moved it up to the half forward line. It's with Nevitt. Crowded forward line. Mitch Nevitt sees, kicks to the pack. Good spoil away by Lemmy, who we've spoken about a lot today. It's been a tough afternoon for him and all of his friends in the back line, all over the field, really.
That looked to me, because he's been under siege and he might just be lacking a little bit of confidence, been outmarked a few times. Yep. I prefer to see him just take the catch there, but he's killed the ball out of bounds.
Speaking of second guessing yourself, I think Harry might have been doing the same thing there. Clear in the area of the Blues. O'Sullivan sees it go out of play. So we've got Sandringham and the Northern Bull Ants kicking off in a little while. The big one out at Victoria Park as well, Carlton and Essendon. You can watch all of the games on afl.com.au.
Well, Carlton are playing twice, are they, Brent?
Did I say Carlton? I meant Collingwood, obviously. Collingwood and Essendon. Thank you for keeping me honest, Dan. That's why you're here. Hughes bursts his way through. Long kick down towards full forward. Bradkey's wrestling with a couple of them. The numbers went out. Lewis and Young, who runs through half back. One bounce becomes 2. He's got some support in Nelson, who's having a pretty good third quarter for the Blues. Back to Lockie Young. The third bounce. Kick into the pocket. It didn't find its way to Carl, who was outnumbered anyway, and then Jecker's kick is a shocker.
I was praising him for his kicking about 5 minutes ago, Emerson Jecker, but...
Cop that, Dan. That's the commentator's curse.
Ned Carl, I know when you're 86 points down, you're probably not going to get too many looks. He likes to get the ball over the back, does Ned Carl. He's very dangerous there, but if you can just keep... There he is again. There he is.
Hacks it onto the boot. Goes to full forward. Kuiper's flying again.
I think that might be Bailey Lambert on this occasion.
Is it number 80 and not 60? Right at the top of the goal square. Flying like a big man. We'll line it up from point blank.
Yeah, I think the point I was trying to make, if you're a defender playing on Ned Carl, you just got to be very careful that he doesn't get behind you, because that's where he likes to hit the scoreboard.
Speaking of, Bailey Lambert's going to do so here. Pops it through. Carlton starting to tick the scoreboard over a little more now and get some more flow in their game, but despite the fact we're creeping towards three-quarter time and there's still a quarter to go, it's far too late. Bailey Lambert's third disposal. A ripping mark at the top of the goal square. Flew like a big man. I confused him for Blake Kuipers, who's already taken one of the marks of the year earlier on today. If you missed that, you can go back and have a look on the highlights. It's already on social media, and it got it. What did you say, Dan? Was it a wowee? Is that what you said?
Probably. That's all I've got when I see a sticky like that. But it was an unusual mark. I thought he hung in the air for such a long time. Jumped early, and I've got to have a look at that when I get home.
Almost as good as Jamie Elliott on Anzac Day. Here's Ramshaw, who escapes the middle. Has a bounce. He's got Phillips out wide. Back to Ramshaw. Ramshaw goes for home from the paint of 50. Jekka reaching for it. Stay in here, will it? It goes right up the boundary line. Jekka kept it in, and Capron said, let's see it out.
Well, to Carlton's credit, in the last 10 minutes, they've been prepared to take the game on and run and carry a little bit more than they have. No point in playing careful at this point in the game.
80 points the margin. They have kicked 4 goals in this quarter, Carlton. Here's an opportunity for Murdoch. Going back to his own goal. They'll be a little bit gun-shy to concede it here, the Cats. They don't. Jekka measures a nice kick, and it's a mark out there in the back pocket to Oisin Mullen. Yeah, the problem for the Blues, even though they've kicked 4 goals in this quarter, is that Geelong have kicked 8. Concede 8 goals in a quarter in any quarter, you're probably in trouble. Out to the broadcast side, Bradkey jumps into the pack. Prout brought it to ground. Capron again plays the boundary line. 18-11, 119 Geelong. Carlton 6-3-39.
Well, you've always got to look at the positives in these situations. Obviously, they're undermanned, and good to see young Jess Getty there again. He's a competitor.
Yeah, he was really good on debut last week. He had 18 disposals. I was surprised that they actually pulled him out of the team. Here's Carl. Does the team thing, centering ball. And here's Luke Nelson again, who's probably been just about best on ground in this third quarter.
Well, he might kick another major, Nelson.
Oh, golly. This is the problem when we have blowouts. We've got to make our own fun, and Dan Winkle comes up with stuff like that. Meantime, the trainers below us are having a look at Caelan Bradkey after that last marking contest. Looks like he's okay. He's limping slightly. Meanwhile, we're watching over Luke Nelson, who's lining up for goal number 2. To the Legends stand end. Started left and stayed there. And that'll be 1-1 for Luke Nelson. Who will be, you keep talking about the positives, that's one that they'll take away from today, the Blues. An experienced campaigner at this level we mentioned. Heading towards three-quarter time. Umpire kindly allowing that mark to Mullen, and not is it only a mark, it's also a 50-metre penalty. I think that was one of those technicalities where the player played on, but the player on the mark moved before the umpire made the call, which is one of the more frustrating calls in footy, if you ask most football fans. So the Cats going forward again. 32.5 minutes gone in the third quarter is Closey, and all alone in the 50 and taking the mark is Jed Buse, who won't go for home. Oh, he had another short option there, but it was well telegraphed by the Carlton player racing back into the defensive 50. It was Lambert. Carlton on their way now. Down the broadcast wing. Oh, it's going to be a free kick for an illegal shepherd, or too high in the shepherd of Carl, who's had a dirty afternoon, something to that effect. Or maybe a shepherd too far off the ball. Not a call you see made a whole lot. Geelong turn it over going forward anyway.
Well,
Dan,
Jed Hughes' turnover there was like ice when he was moving the ball there. Just you could almost tell what was going to happen. The Carlton defender also read it. So just had a couple of moments today, Jed, that he'd want back.
Here's Toby Conway onto the loose ball, lumbers on into the open goal. Toby Conway has his third, and he has shown some real promising signs around the ground, Toby Conway. Message to Chris Scott, get this guy in the senior team and leave him there. That's impressive.
Look, he's been able to identify Alex Murkov's running ability, and he knows that he's got him there, so he's trying to use that to his advantage, and he did on that occasion once again. He's an unusual player for mine, Toby Conway, 21 years of age. He's mobile. He follows up his work. And you just think in a couple of years' time, when he gets even more of an AFL body on him and he starts to be even more competitive in the air, what will you have at AFL level?
Yeah, pick 24 in the 2021 draft. That's looking like a bit of a steal for the Cats. Another one. Only played 3 VFL games last year. He had a stress fracture. Stress fracture in his foot, and Carlton are a fractured team right now. They're going into the final break, 85 points down on Geelong, 19-11, 125. Carlton 6-4-40.
I just keep talking about small wins, Brent, and if they can, we talked about Luke Nelson in that quarter, probably a small win for them, but I would think we just saw Jai Clark win this stoppage quite comfortably again. I think a small win for Carlton would be to perhaps maybe even up the clearance numbers. It's 31-23 Geelong's way, so if they can keep that at around a difference of 8 or 9, they'd be happy with that, I think. And I did mention during the third quarter, they were prepared to run and gun a little bit, Carlton, take the game on. I would say just keep sticking to your system, and when you get some personnel back, you know that'll work for you.
The Blues are in defence here. Oh, McMahon in and out of trouble. Off to Ramshaw. Monahan just jagged it on the boot and he missed his teammate there in Ferranato. O'Sullivan the intercept in towards Monahan. A big fly in from the side. And the umpire is going to pay illegal contact in the marking contest. And the free kick to be taken by Darcy Hogg, who was one of the late-ins today for the Blues.
Son of Matthew Hogg, the ex-Carlton premiership player.
There's a flashback for Blues supporters of a certain age from the Northern Knights via the old Carey grammarians.
What do you think his nickname would be, Brent?
Oh, I'm not very good at nicknames, Dan. I know you are.
I'm thinking maybe Boss.
Yeah? That's a good one, as we've got another 50 here for the Cats, and that's going to take Lawson Humphreys to just inside the paint of 50. What was your nickname, Dan?
I had a number of nicknames. Some
any,
nice ones.
Can you say any of them on air?
Well, with a surname of Winkle, I had a Wee Willie, 40, as in 40 Winks.
Yeah.
Bull, as in Bullwinkle, from Rocky and Bullwinkle. So, yeah.
Here is Lawson Humphreys, looking for Geelong's 20th goal of the afternoon. He's done some great work across half-back, and he adds his name to the score sheet for the Cats. Geelong's 11th individual goal kicker. That's his second of the season.
He's been impressive, as Lawson Humphreys. He's got some moves. He's clean. Looks like he's having a run in the forward line now. Started back. The 21-year-old from Swan Districts played a mix of reserves and senior football. The Geelong recruiters saw something in him.
Yeah, a very late pick last year, Dan. Sorry to cut you off. Pick 63. That must have been one of the final draft selections used. Actually played in the Black Swans reserve premiership last year.
Some very regal names in this Geelong team. You've got Lawson Humphreys and Jamison Ballantyne.
Well, Humphreys Junior Footy Club was the Wickham Wolves. Do you want to have a go at saying that one, Dan? Wickham Wolves.
Well, did Will White play for the Wickham Wolves?
Geelong into the attacking zone again, and a free kick to Mitch Nevitz, who's put his best foot forward again here today for the Cats. This will be disposal number 19. He chips it up for the big man coming out of the goal square, and that is a ripping mark coming out on the lead, Shannon Neal. Whenever I say his name, I've got to stop myself from saying Shannon Knoll.
Well, he's got a car after that mark.
Speaking of players putting their best foot forward, Neal's kicked 3 goals straight, was a late inclusion into the Geelong senior team last week. Cats trying to combat the Brisbane Rucks. Oscar McInerney and co. Lining up for goal number 4. Hasn't missed today. He has now. Just fading away to the right-hand side. And Geelong, we remember, were pretty inaccurate to start the game. But they found the major opening plenty in quarters 2, 3 and 4. And they're now out to 20 goals, 12.
Yeah, that's right. They've been ruthlessly efficient since then. I think they had the 20 inside 50s in that first quarter and kicked 4-6. So since then, what have they kicked? 16-6.
This is where they've really struggled today, the Blues. The ground balls from the kicks down the line. They get onto this one. It's a rainmaker from O'Keefe. Stevens kept it away from Ned Carl, and it's out of play. And Geelong, in this particular competition, Dan, looking to return to the finals for the first time since 2019. I had to double check my research during the week. I come across an interesting one. They haven't won a final in this league for 11 years. 2013 was the last time they tasted victory in September. It's the kick down towards the goal mouth. It's going to go all the way. Buse just at the last, a diving attempt to save it. We've had a couple of Smithy snags today. Jed Buse didn't want to give the league sponsor any airtime there. Yeah, 2013 they beat Williamstown in the preliminary final. Lost to Box Hill the following week in the big game. Since then, they've played in 4 finals and lost them all. It's crazy to think about how ever present the senior team has been in the finals at the senior level. And there were so many years there where Geelong were going deep into the finals at both levels, but that hasn't happened in the VFL.
Yeah, look, it is a little bit different at VFL level because they're more so just trying to develop players. So even if they finish towards the bottom of the ladder but get 2 or 3 players out of the VFL team and into the AFL team to have long careers, that would be more so a win.
Turning around and then straightening up was Edmonds. Aquay in good position, couldn't take the mark. Disappointing result. It's attacked out of there. I think it might have been Closey. It's bouncing and bouncing, and it was Closey. Just the wrong side of the stick.
Yeah, Dom Aquay, I know he's coming back from the concussion, but his inability to affect or impact the marking contest today has been noticeable. I think he's obviously lacking confidence because that was an easy mark for him there, and a player like him should be his bread and butter.
Out of the back 50 come the Blues, not for long. Hardy couldn't take the mark. Little kick out of there came from Hughes. Nelson took the mark, it didn't go 15. Handball smothered well by Humphreys. I've really liked the look of Lawson Humphreys today. Mullen kicks to the outnumber, and McMahon floats on in and takes an intercept mark for the Blues. Talk about low on confidence. And Dominic Aquay, I'd imagine he'd have a few friends that need to go down to the corner shop after the game and buy a couple of bags of confidence.
I think it was Dennis Pagan who coined that phrase. You can't go down to the shops and buy confidence.
If you could, it would cost you a pretty penny, knowing today's inflation. So we've got a stoppage on the wing. Carlton missed the finals last year. They missed out on playing on wildcard weekend by percentage only. They were finalists the year before. As Bradkey sends the Cats into the 50 and marking unchallenged with the high ball coming in is Ballantyne, I think that is, down there for the Cats. Carlton not able to affect the ball drop there.
So it's been their lack of competitiveness defensively for mine, Brent. I know they've been diluted, but still, you need to have that effort defensively, and they just haven't brought it today, the Blues.
Valentine doesn't quite make the distance. Logan Prout with a thumping spoil through for a behind. Do you think that will be the number one thing that has disappointed Luke Powell the most?
I think so. I mean, they may have gone into the game, particularly with Binns, Durden and Chincotta coming out late, knowing that probably the result wouldn't go their way, but it shouldn't affect the way you play. And if you come into this side, you should be able to defend with intent. It's almost a given at the level.
Oh, O'Keefe's kick into the middle was not good. It's intercepted by Hughes, who's got help across the ground here. White leaves it for Ballantyne. White will get it in the end from Mullen. White can go to the 50, check the kick, did go 15. The Cats will have to play on here. Swinging onto the left is Hardy, up towards the hot spot. That is well done by O'Keefe, standing his ground at full-back for Carlton. I mentioned the Blues played finals at VFL level in 2022. That's their only finals appearance in the past 10 seasons. You'll remember they were aligned with the Northern Bull Ants and then the Northern Blues for so many years. As Ferronado's run into trouble, and the umpire was right there to see it was not a legal handball. Carlton they'll have better days when they get some of those players back into the team. Today's turned a little bit sour for them. Geelong inside 50. Riccardi did the right thing, but Hughes couldn't get to the ball drop. Intercepted by Marr. Carlton to the outer side. It was Hogg to Will White. Oh, he's had a bounce with his man closing. We'll go back to Hogg, who feigned a handball, then kicked him board. Looking for but not finding Stevens. Nevitt knew it and moved it on. And they had the outnumber there, Carlton, and they still couldn't affect the contest. Neal takes the mark, off to Jecker, and he's going to spot up the lead of Hardy, 50 metres out from goal, who brings it inboard swiftly to Ballantyne, who will have a mirror image look at goal to the one he had only a moment or two ago. Cast your eye over the ground, and a lot of the players with hands on hips and looking a little forlorn.
Yeah, the number of uncontested marks has gone through the roof in the last 15 minutes.
Ballantyne didn't quite have the distance with that last look at goal. Keeping his place in the team after being the late in. He was the one who replaced Shannon Neal in the team last week up in Brisbane. He's missed to the right-hand side again.
So I guess when Geelong are this far in front, in 94 points ahead, you can probably revert to being a little bit cute with the football, but I think coaching staff would be adamant that you've got to stick to your process, not go away from what you do well. You practice it, you bring it out to the ground, even in the last quarter when you're 16 goals ahead.
Clever kick from Nelson on the outside of the boot into the 50, and then Lambert kicks it to the man on the paint of the boundary in Ned Carl, who kicked a goal from this exact spot on the ground last week against Port Melbourne in the shadows of the training centre. He stepped out onto the left and he hooked it back through. Not quite like that. Misses to the near side. Ned Carl, who played some good footy for the Blues at VFL level last year, finished third in their best and fairest, 28 goals in 17 games. Geelong to the outer side, Lemmy's outpointed again by Neal.
We've heard that call a few times from you today, Brent. Neal has had him in the air on a number of occasions. Look, the weight of ball in there might contribute to that, but I think they'll be sitting with Harry Lemmy and looking at his edits during the week and trying to identify how we can get better in the marking contest one-on-one.
That's a fabulous kick in towards half forward off the boots of Liam McMahon. At half forward, the Blues have it in the hands of Nelson, who has an option short and wide. It's a difficult one for Hogg to mark with the one hand. He went looking for Getty in the pocket. Just getting a fingertip on it was Dan Caperon, seeing it out of play. Been a wonderful player for a long time at VFL level, Dan Caperon.
How many years has he been on their list now? Is he 8 or 9, perhaps, Dan Caperon?
Yeah, 8 seasons since 2017. Come across from Frankston.
Yeah, he played a couple of years at Frankston, I think in around 2014 or thereabouts.
Part of the furniture now at IKON Park. The Blues go back towards full forward. High leapers. Oh, it's come to Will White, who turned away from everybody and dribbled it through for a goal. Will White, the 23rd player today for the Blues, kicks their 6th goal of the afternoon.
I was a little surprised to see that he was the 23rd player, but sometimes at the level they do try and rotate the players through, the VFL listed players, to give them an opportunity and to see what they've got. But Will White, he's got some tricks, hasn't he? He's kicked a couple today, had a nice piece of play on the outer side there a few minutes ago where he was able to get out of trouble. So 8 goals in his 4th game. It's not a bad little result, is it?
That was his 2nd today, goal number 7 for the Blues. I think I said 6 a moment ago. 7-6-48, Carlton trailing the Cats 20-15, 135. 20-year-old Will White, 179 centimetre. We've already told you where he's from.
Will White from Warrnambool, down the Western Way.
Happy hunting ground. Carlton and Geelong recruiting from out that way rather heavily. O'Sullivan, Hughes, cuts his way through the middle. What a kick. What a kick out in front of Gary Rowan. Must have been a delight to lead onto and take that grab.
I think someone may have mentioned to Jed Hughes at 3/4 time that I had a little poke at his kicking. He's just laced out Gary Rowan on that occasion.
Jed Hughes out there, the sole survivor from Geelong's last VFL premiership team, 2012. So he's actually VFL and AFL premiership player for the Cats. Gary Rowan sets sail and misses. Doesn't add goal number 5. It'll be 4-2 for Gary Rowan. Throws his head back in frustration. Well, McQuay's kick. Well, luckily he had teammates lining up because it went right over the head of his intended target. Young. Short to Ramshaw, and O'Quay's off and running, and O'Quay's turned it over to Rowan, who sends it back into the 50, and it's all opened up ahead. It'll get out the back to Manor. Lewis is there as well. Knocked it back towards the boundary line. Luckily, McMahon was there. Otherwise, he would have been knocked off for insufficient intent. It's out of play. Doesn't get any easier for the Blues, Dan. They're away to Werribee next week. Then at home to Casey. That's a tough couple of weeks.
Well, if they can get a couple back, Werribee we know had a poor loss over the weekend to Williamstown, so could be a more interesting game with some numbers coming back.
Stevens tried to snap that back at goal. It went the complete opposite direction, and jumping in and taking the mark anyway was Jai Clark.
I wouldn't mind seeing that on replay, Brent, because if it goes 20 metres in the air, but only a distance of 2.
It did go a bit higher than the length.
Is it still a mark? I'm not sure.
The umpire has said that's fine by me. So Jai Clark for disposal number 22. 4 tackles and 4 clearances. He was their highest draft pick a couple of years ago, the highest draft pick that Geelong had used in 16 years. Clarify that in just a moment as Jai Clark goes at goal, and boy, this is pretty dirty anyway, but this could have been a lot worse. They've missed a lot of shots in this quarter. That's their 5th behind. They've kicked 1-5, 1-6 make it. Carlton short from the kick into Logan Prout. Yeah, Jai Clark, pick 8, 2023 from the Falcons. Geelong's highest draft pick in 16 years.
Ooh.
Big contest on the wing. And a turnover. Edmonds has a long look into the middle. And then a little hop, skip and a jump and evades the tackler. And a nice kick out wide, and here's Hamish Sinnott, who has impressed us today.
Not Bailey Lambert's finest moment. A hospital hand pass there. Could have been real strife for his teammate then.
Knocked away from Bradkey and then knocked back goalward bound, and Sean Manor, don't be missing these. And he adds his name to the fun for the Cats. He's had a few looks, Sean Manor. For as good a day as it's been for Geelong, Manor Probably hasn't had the influence that you might have expected. But he kicks his goal. And that'll be Geelong's 12th goal kicker.
Yeah, Sean Manor going from Werribee system into an AFL system. You'd have to accept that he'd probably be playing a slightly different role. He'd have to be educated up into the way Geelong want to play their football. So,
well, given the fact that he's come into the AFL system as a 26-year-old, you would think that, you know, with a wiser head on the shoulders, they've probably looked at the Cats, and thought, you know, someone that's a bit more mature age, and we know what a great history they have drafting the mature age guys. You'd think that it would be a bit easier to teach someone a new system rather than, you know, an 18 or 19-year-old that's come in right up the end of the draft.
Yeah, it's more so his role might change a little bit. So, I know. Here we go again.
Yeah, it's another goal from the Cats. It's the son of a gun, Oscar Riccardi. Adds his second. Both of his goals have been beauties. Oscar Riccardi rudely interrupted Dan Winkle just as he was making a great point.
Now I've forgotten how great that point was. Who was I talking about, Brent?
Sean Manor.
I was waffling, wasn't I?
And his role changing it in an AFL system.
We saw last year when he was playing at Werribee, his ability to roll through the midfield and then go forward. And whilst I'm not part of the Geelong coaching group, it would be interesting just to see specifically the role they see him playing in this team.
So into time on in the final quarter, and Geelong have finally got the Blues by triple digits. 101 points the margin. 22-17, 149. Carlton 7-6, 48. Ma, who's tried hard all day in the clinches for the Blues, bangs the kick into the 50. Mark dropped by Murdoch. White there for support. Off to Jecker. Jecker's kick landed flush on the paint of the boundary and out of bounds. How about the next couple of matches for the Cats? They actually have a bye 2 weeks from now, but next week they're at home against Frankston, which is never an easy trip out there. The crowd will be up and about, Dan.
Sorry, is that game at Frankston?
At Frankston,
oh,
yep.
Well, I think I'm going to book my tickets for that one.
In fact, no, sorry, my mistake.
Okay.
It is down at Cardinia Park. Sorry, Dan. I just got so enticed about the Frankston home crowds. So it'll be a tough trip for the Dolphins. We'll be going into that one off a win after beating the Burgers last night. Blues going into attack off the boot of Wilson. Comes to the foot of the pack. Couple of Blues fighting one another for the footy. Popped out to Ma. Round the bodies. It got the journey. It did, but it clanked off the goalpost.
It's been a little quieter this half as Billy Wilson was probably Carlton's best in the first quarter. A young man from Dramana. He's got the Dramana hairstyle too, the surfy style. Young man from the Stingrays.
Yeah, their best and fairest winner last season in the Coates Talent League Team of the Year as well. Solid mark out there taken in front by O'Sheen Mullen. What have you made of his return to Australia, Dan? Mullen.
Look, he hasn't had to do too much, I guess, in terms of defending, but just generally, I just love the way he's adapted to the game so quickly. As I said, he's powerful. He makes pretty good decisions. He's still probably got a little bit of work to do there. But as we know, the Irish can pick the game up pretty quickly.
Oh, that should have been a dangerous tackle. Sorry, Dan, to cut you off. Hughes on Kuipers. Yeah, Mullen. I can't get over how the Irish guys can kick that footy so well without having grown up with it. They just come over and take to it like a duck to water, for want of a better analogy. Hughes into the 50. Oh, super mark from Shannon Neal. He got rid of Lemmy and still had work to do. Flinging himself back into the IKON Park turf. And he gets up feeling a little bit of cramp.
I think one-on-one, that's almost, I would say, up to 7, maybe 8 marks for Shannon Neal against young Lemmy today. So,
yeah, 8 marks total.
I know we've spoken a little bit about Lemmy, but we should probably talk about Shannon Neal. And I think if they're looking at the highlights or edits this week, and if they're looking for a forward, the Geelong AFL team, well, he's certainly in good form.
Normally he's got a nice looking set shot routine. That one might have been hindered by the cramp. Missed a long way to the left. So Shannon Neal now has 3 goals too.
It's always the ability to transition from the VFL level to the AFL level. And if Shannon Neal plays at AFL level, he's obviously going to be coming up against some quality opponents.
Aquay backed himself this time and takes the mark. Sees something he likes on the outer side, but the kick's not good enough. It's Edmonds with the intercept for Geelong. Out to Manor.
Not sure if you've seen the movie Dog Day Afternoon.
I haven't,
but
Dan.
Dom Aquay has had one of those days today where things just haven't gone right for him. I like the fact that he's still trying to compete in the air, but some of his turnovers have been noticeable. Just really low on confidence at this point, it seems.
So Sean Manor's going to have a crack at his second goal. Kicked one only a few moments ago. Again, runs out to the right. Won't score. Will go to the waiting pack as a terrific defensive mark hauled in by Liam McMahon, who's been used by the Blues here, there and everywhere today. Up front and down back as well. Oh, Phillips gave it to Monahan, and Monahan's charged down. Somehow managed to get the ball free when it looked like he was done for all money. Ramshaw runs up the centre wing. Position on the outer side. Handball to Nelson. Comes back inboard. Here's Ferranato. Has teammates lining up in the middle. It's a stretched football game now. O'Keefe with the mark. Lemmy. It's his kick into the 50. Had to fly from the back there, the Carlton forward. That was Will White, and it's wrenched away by Nevitt. Ballantyne, oh, this is Todd White, who dropped the football and was then tackled. That's a good call from the umpire. And in the end, the fumble from Todd White actually helped his cause. So the Cats at home against Frankston next week, then the bye, then they come back to Melbourne to play Coburg. Then they're back at home to play the GWS Giants.
So we're talking about the Irish players, and Rob Monahan is another one for Carlton today. Only had the 5 disposals, and you can tell he's just finding his way in the game. That piece of play, or passage of play before, was a little unfamiliar to him, so all they'll be wanting to see from Monahan is just improvement. They know he's got the athleticism and the traits.
Here's Billy Wilson, who turns himself clear outside of the boots and marked right on the behind line down there for the Blues by Nelson. That was probably the most untidy the Cats have looked trying to come out of the back line today. It was a missed kick that missed Daniel Capron that started this fire. And a short kick inboard, and here's your chance to talk about Ned Carl. I know we've spoken about him a little bit today, Dan. I feel like when you have results like this where you get beaten a lot, it's generally the small forwards that suffer the most because they don't really find their way into the game. That's happened with Ned today, I'm afraid. But he can get his name on the score sheet here, on the majors column anyway. Get the margin back under 100 points. That's all they're trying to muster here now, the Blues. And Ned Carl does just that. Kicks truly for Carlton. Their 8th goal comes 21 and a bit minutes into the final quarter. And the margin comes back to 95 points.
It's probably been overshadowed by Will White in terms of their small forwards. Carlton will kick the 2 goals, and that was Ned Carl's first. If you look at the matchup here, it's Emerson Jecker, who's a monster of a man, playing on Ned Carl. Played a little bit of football at Essendon, did Ned.
Yeah, was at Essendon during the COVID years.
Played the 6 AFL games. He's a slippery forward, loves to get out the back.
It hasn't been his day today, but he has been a very good player at VFL level since being delisted by the Bombers.
Yeah, does his best work from, I reckon, 0 to 25 metres out. That's where he's really comfortable.
Here's Mullen, who steps out of the tackle. Handball asked a lot of Stevens. He was good enough, though, to get it off to Murdoch. It's Closey, who sends them down towards the paint of 50. Hughes gets onto the loose football. Lowered his eyes. It was a very short kick that Bradkey couldn't mark regardless. Young has had a busy afternoon at the office for Carlton in the back line, the captain. Kuiper's not far from where he took one of the marks of the year earlier. Conway again roved it. Humphries checks the kick back towards full forward. We're dropping the mark. Lewis, Bradkey roving, snapping and tumbling it through. And how good have their big men been today, crumbing those balls inside 50 of the Cats?
30 seconds earlier, he had a moment he wouldn't have liked. Probably an easy chest mark drop, but well done to Kalen Bradkey.
Got his second.
Young man from Corowa, who Richmond ended up taking last year. Mature age player.
Didn't get a look at the Tigers last year. I wonder how he might have gone if he'd stayed on the list this year, because you mentioned all the injuries that the Blues have had this year. I reckon the Tigers have had just as many, and to the key positions as well. Kalen won't be bothered about that, obviously. He's playing some good footy for Geelong's VFL team, trying to find his way back onto a list.
He does have extraordinary athleticism, does Kalen Bradkey, but probably needed to have more of an AFL body in my view last year. He did break his arm and missed quite a few games when he was playing at Richmond.
Cats from the middle. Ballantyne traps it at half forward. This time Bradkey just trailing in behind. Allows his direct opponent Michael Lewis to take the mark. So the Blues away to the Tigers of Werribee next week, and then back at home to play Casey, and then they're back on the road against Williamstown, and then at home to the Gold Coast Suns. So 4 pretty tricky opponents coming up for the Blues. But Geelong is the story of the day. It's a thumping win over Carlton. 101 points in the end. 3 wins in a row for the Cats. And they're making an early season charge after a slow start to the season. Geelong, look at that scoreline. 23-18, 150.